Hey, welcome to Whatcha Doin with Brandon Horwin.
And Sophie Williams. And today's special guest
Oh,
is
yes, my name is Anita Gillette, and we're going to do this podcast. We're going to tell some funny stories.
Great, we are so thrilled to have you, and I believe you and Sophie. And first of all, welcome to Whatcha Doin, and thank you for being here. We're so thrilled to have you.
Well, thank you very much for asking.
And so I think Sophie and you have a bit of a connection before we start. Sophie, do you want to mention that?
Oh yeah, we're both Baltimore girls.
I thought that would be it. Yes. Oh, hon. How are you, hon?
I'm good. How are you, hon?
You got to say okay.
Okay.
Yeah, you got it.
Yeah, that's so funny. It's so glad meeting a fellow Baltimorean.
Well, we used to call us Baltimoreans, but
I heard that.
Yeah.
I went to, I'm not sure if you know, but I went to the Institute of Notre Dame in the city.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we had a nun there, and she was like, she called herself a Baltimorean. She had the best accent you've ever heard.
Oh, God.
Every
Well,
weekend we'd ask her, we were like, Hildy, what are you gonna do this weekend? She's like, oh, I'm gonna go get a fish fry at Coco's.
yeah.
I'm gonna go to the ocean visit my sister.
Well, when you get a real sound like that,
I know, it was so great. It's so great.
The only time I knew that when I did My Fair Lady years ago with Michael Allenson, who was Rex Harrison's standby. I mean, it's the best musical ever written because the book is straight Shaw, and of course it's all about learning to speak properly. Well, the Cockney, a lot of people have trouble with the Cockney if they're doing Eliza, but I had no problems at all. Yeah, that's where we get it. It's the Cockney sound.
It's so good.
Ow, ow. Yeah.
That's so funny.
Well,
That's where I learned to act, by the way. I mean, I studied with a couple of teachers, but Michael Allenson really taught me to act. He took on the persona of Henry Higgins, and while I could do the Cockney very well, he was worried that I would be not good in the garden scene in the end when she meets him on her own terms, and she has become what he's made her in that way, at least elocution wise. And we worked on that scene for the whole 13 weeks that we were out of town. We did a summer stock tour, and every morning after the show I would meet him for coffee at the local, wherever we were, diner, with my notebook, my little notebook, and I still have it, and my pen ready to write down all the things he said. And he studied at the Royal Academy of Dramatic Arts, so you couldn't get a better teacher, and it was one-on-one. So I learned a lot from Michael Allenson, and I'll never forget what he did for me.
Yeah.
absolutely. Now, Anita, how did you get your start in, theater and entertainment and the whole biz, and sort of where did that road take you to, to your first gig per se?
Well, I joined a bunch of groups, when I was still in high school. Around Baltimore, there was a group called the Valley Players. There was also a group called the Alamedian Light Opera Company, and it was run by a whole group of Salvation Army people. The leader of the group was named Colonel Blanche Bowlesby. And when I did Guys and Dolls at City Center, by the way, I used Blanche as my model, and that's why that was that was really, Frank Lesser was in the audience, and he came back and said, I've never seen a Sarah Brown stop a show like that. And I did. And it was nice because I used Colonel Boldsby. Because, they always dressed, and they were always, so staid, and their collars were up in their necks. And I thought, if she ever got this many rum drinks thinking they were milkshakes, she would go wild, because all that pent up, that tight, everything. So when I got drunk, I really got drunk. So If I Were a Belle, it stopped the show, because I think that's what Frank Lesser meant. I've never seen it played that drunk, but that's what I did.
Great.
So I used to be in those groups, and but then I was also working as a medical secretary out at the Army Chemical Center. That's how I paid for my lessons and stuff like that. I came from a rather poor family.
Great. And then you made your first appearance on the Ed Sullivan Show in 1963, and again in 69, which I think the second time was with the company of Cabaret, if I'm not mistaken. But the first time, what was your role on the Ed Sullivan Show? Were you performing as a solo act, or were you with another company that time? And how was the experience on the Ed Sullivan Show?
63 and 69.
Yes.
Okay, then that was Empty Pockets, and then 69 was Cabaret. Okay.
And how was your experience on the Ed Sullivan Show? I mean, such an icon of,
Yeah. Well, when I was doing All American, the Strauss and Adams show that Mel Brooks wrote the script for at the Winter Garden, Eileen Hurley was in the cast, and she told me that when she was in the audience once, and after she had done, I think it was, wait a minute, she had done Othello, and he introduced her as Hamlet's mother. And he introduced her as Irene Hervey. She was funny, but that's what he used to do. He used to make mistakes like that.
That's funny.
What?
That's funny.
Yeah, well, he was quite a character. But, at least he got people on his show, which was wonderful. It really was. But my first big break, first of all, the big break was moving to New York. I call that my magic moment, because like the song in The Gay Life that I did later in my career. Well, not that much later. But we moved, I married one of the PhDs, one of the scientists at Army Chemical Center. We met over an autopsy report, because I used to take down the dictation when they would autopsy the experimental animals, and you're going to get I'll get a lot of mail about killing animals, because, the animal rights people will get on my case. You can't use plants when you're trying to find out what to do about wounded soldiers on a battlefield. But anyway, so we met Dr. Gillette, and I met over an autopsy. I was taking the dictation. So, and I love science. I always have. And so I think I fell in love with him when I typed his paper, which was the effects of desoxycorticosterone in chick fibroblasts. Oh, I fell madly in love with him then. Not easy without an audience. Thank you.
Well, that's a great story. We're just going to move along. But you've had such a stunning and, very consistent career on Broadway, TV, and film. I mean, just to name a few: Cabaret, Guys and Dolls, Bob Carroll, Ted and Alice, Brighton Beach Memoirs, Moonstruck, as well as many, many others. So what has it been like just dedicating your entire life to performing? And is there one aspect of it you love the most?
It's not my entire life, and that's why I still love it, because I have a life. Stella Adler said, to be in this business, you need to have the tenacity of a bulldog, the hide of a rhinoceros, and a good home to go home to. Or else, when I got married to Dr. Gillette, we moved to New York because he got a job here. He was going to accept a job, speaking of vaccines, at Pfizer. Oddly enough, he was going to accept a job there at Pfizer in Terre Haute, Indiana. And that's where we were going. I was literally typing the letter of acceptance to Pfizer, and he got a telegram from Cornell Medical College in New York City, over on the east side at New York Presbyterian Hospital, or it was New York Cornell. And it was a much better offer. And so that's how we ended up in New York City. Otherwise, I'd be in Terre Haute with probably 10 kids or whatever. I don't know what I would have been doing. But now I have some great grandkids. I even have a great granddaughter, not a great granddaughter.
I'm going to name a few of your incredible theater credits over the years. We're going to get to some more, but you can expand on any of these as you would like. Gypsy, starring Ethel Merman; Cabaret with, I believe, Joel Grey.
Gypsy was my first Broadway show. That was my first Broadway show, and that's when I learned an awful lot. I was an understudy. I was brought in as an understudy to Dainty June. When Lane Bradbury left the role of Dainty June, her understudy took it over, and I took over the understudy's part, becoming the understudy to Merle. Her name was Merle Louise, and Merman, the perfect part for the perfect woman for that part. Nobody in my mind, I guess, because I was so impressionable then, being my first Broadway show, nobody could do Gypsy like she was Rose. That's all. She didn't act. She was. That's the way she was. So that was a big impression. I used to run down from the 5th floor of the Imperial down to the wings to watch her do Rose's Turn every night. That was just a great treat.
How old were you?
Huh?
How old were you?
I was about 21, I think. Okay. Yeah, I got married when I was about 21, 20. Well, when I was 20, I had my first child when I was 24. And he was born, I didn't know I was pregnant when I got into Gypsy. So, and then Julie Stein called me and, and asked would I audition for Do Re Mi, and but I didn't. I was too busy with my kids, so. But I did a bunch of other things at the Gay Life, which my part was cut out in Detroit. I did, and Carnival was the big deal thing. David Merrick remembered me from Gypsy, I guess. And what Julie Stein, I'm sure that's what I was going to say. Julie Stein probably told him I was good or something, but they asked me to, would I understudy Anna Maria Alberghetti, because they needed somebody who looked very young and could still sing that role, which is the soprano, of course. And that's when I became an understudy. Gower Champion directed that. And it was interesting that I was going to leave the show because they were actually going to fire me, or it was because I had a test time. Like they gave me a contract to be the understudy and in the chorus to be the gypsy fortune teller banging a tambourine. And then I should understudy Anna Maria Alberghetti, the role of Lily. And they had 5 days out of town to pay me another $25 and sign me to a run of the play contract. And out of town, we had never even looked at the understudy script. No, we never had a rehearsal. And they wanted to, so one day before the 5 days were up, maybe it was even the last day, they quick called an understudy rehearsal, and Gower came in one side of the room, you know, the rehearsal room, and then slowly walked across and out the other door. And then about 20 minutes later, they called me and said, Gower wants to see you in the audience. And so I went out to the audience to sit next to him, waiting for him to say, we'll definitely want you to be the understudy. But then you see, first of all, you have to get a picture of what I looked like. I had just finished nursing my baby. I still had red hair. I looked about as much like a little European waif as Sophie Tucker. I mean, you know, because I had bosoms and I was, you know, still weaning my baby, and I was still in the chorus and doing this stuff. And anyway, Gowers was directing a scene on the stage with Kay Ballard and Jimmy Mitchell. And he said, and I was sitting on this side of him like this. And he said, Kay, I want you to cross over oh yes, Anita, we've decided that, no, not there. I want you, Jimmy, would you just move right over? Yeah, that's right, that we've decided that we no longer need you as no, not there. I want you to do and it was like flicking a fly off his sleeve. He fired me and said, we would love you to stay as the gypsy, you know, but we can't, we're going to try to look for somebody more suitable physically for the role for the understudy to Anna Maria. And so I was devastated because I didn't know about the rhinoceros hide I should be putting up. And I ran up to the mezzanine. We were at the National Theater in Washington. And I just went into the ladies' room up there. It was during the day, no audience or anything. I ran up there and just was bawling my eyes out. And the stage manager came in and knocked on the door and came in and tried to soothe me. But I knew that, so I was on a 5-day notice. We got back into town. They hadn't found anybody yet. All my friends, all my competitors were sending me little notes saying, oh, you're leaving the show. I just auditioned for your part. So that was a hard thing to get through. But I feel if you get through something like that, that's where you get the hide of the rhinoceros that I was talking about. And you've got to have that tenacity as well. And I fought it, but I really wanted to quit right there. I thought that would be it. I shouldn't even be trying. But my husband was good about it. He helped me out, coached me about it, and said, you know, obviously this business is going to be this kind of tough business, so you better get used to it. And if you don't, let's just stop right now. So that was a big decision. And so anyway, I stuck it out. And I gave my notice when I would go to work, you know. First of all, I would go to, they would have an understudy rehearsal before the Saturday matinee. And because David Merrick didn't want to pay, you know, the accompanist for the auditioners and for the rehearsal so in that time I had lost weight. I dyed my hair dark in case anything would happen. I would look more like Lily. And I learned the part, which was the main thing, I think. And they changed their mind, and Gower came by after months. They hadn't found anybody. I would go in, I would work, and I did the whole thing. And Gower said, whatever you do, after he came and looked at a run through, he said, oh my God, well, whatever you do, don't leave. And then I gave my 2-week notice because I got another job. Not because of being mean. I got another job, which was in the gay life. And so I went out to Detroit to open the Fisher Theater out there then, and with the gay life, and my part was cut out well in about 4 or 5 weeks into the run of the play, after we were in Detroit. And when I came back, David Merrick, who had just told me, he didn't know I had given my notice. And he told me I'd never work for him again. And he forgot that. He forgot he was mad at me. And he asked me would I take over for Anna Maria Alberghetti's vacation. So I did that because I'm skipping the biggest part. You see, I'm rambling. The reason right after Gower said that to me, I gave my notice in on a Saturday night to go do the gay life. And on Sunday, Alberghetti went to the hospital and I went on Monday night. And all David Merrick knew was I was a girl they'd been trying to get rid of. So he was like, and then he came to a rehearsal and he called everybody in the whole world, all the newspaper people, all kinds of people, and the place was packed on Monday night when I went on. And I got a standing ovation. And it was like one of the biggest nights of my life. And then he found out that I had given my notice and he told me I'd never work for him again. But then when I came back when I got fired from the gay life, he called me and asked me if I would take over for her 2 weeks. And he put my name over the title, Anita Gillette in Carnival. I have pictures of me standing on a ladder, pointing to my name over the marquee.
Wow, that's
I did the 2 weeks and then about a month later, I got a bill from a sign company for $90 from Paramus, New Jersey. I had to pay $90 for the sign.
My gosh.
Yeah. That's a long story, but that's.
Okay, so going off of that, regionally, you've starred in, many, many shows, but most famously Knickerbocker Holiday, with, Hollywood talent Burke Lancaster. So how was it working with him? What kind of stories do you have from that?
He was great. He was a lovely man. Not only just his physicality, but he was a nice person. He's the kind of person, if you get sunburned, he'd bring you sun cream that night at the theater. Noxema or something to rub on your sunburn. He was very paternal in a lot of ways because he was a lot older than I was. And he sang September Song. He really, truly loved music, and he knew Italian opera, especially. He knew all the opera arias, and he listened to all great music, and he cared about how he sounded, and he also was very anti-war, and the Vietnam War was raging at that time. So that's what the script was about. Maxwell Anderson and Kurt Weill, they were also of that like mind with Bert about war. And Bert got some people, friends of his to update the script a little. But we did it in period, of course, because it was Peter Stuyvesant. He was even so dedicated that he wore the peg leg on his bad knee because it was more authentic. I said, Bert, nobody's gonna know whether Peter Stuyvesant had his peg on his right or his left leg. You put it on your good knee, not your bad knee. And he said, Anita, there's going to be one night, there'll be some guy in the audience that's going to say he's got the peg on the wrong leg.
Oh my gosh.
Oh my gosh, what a great story. Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
So you also played, you stunningly played Mona the Mistress in the
Oh,
Academy Award winning film Moonstruck alongside the incomparable Cher, Nicolas Cage,
yes.
Danny Aiello. So what was this movie experience like for you? How was it working with those folks? And what did this movie, do for your career?
Norman Jewison said to me at the when we all showed up for the first screening, if you could have been in the last scene, you would have been immediately a star, a Hollywood star, not just Broadway. But of course, Mona couldn't be in the last scene. That was when it all got wrapped up and it was all, it was funny. But I love the cast. The thing is that when I read the script, I thought it was such a strange script. I mean, Nicolas Cage with a wooden hand and talking about the wolf and you go like, what? And I thought this is either going to be the biggest flop or the biggest hit. I don't know which, but I trust Norman Jewison, and these actors are, I mean, Vinnie Gardenia, I knew before. We'd done some little specials together and benefits and so forth. And I just thought, with this cast, they must know something I don't know. So, and of course, John Patrick Shanley is writes off the wall. It's if you just read it and you don't, just the words, you would think the same thing, I think. But my God, when Norman got hold of that, Norman Jewison, and put it together, it was incredible. And they wanted to do some stuff in Canada, which is where Norman is from, and it would have been cheaper to do things up there, but there were some things, some New York stuff you can't fake, and we couldn't fake the Met. He didn't try that, but the opera, the actual opera, when they had shots of the opera, those were all Canadian singers or singers from Toronto that had done the opera in Toronto. That's where he got that footage. But of course, we were only in, and that was when I was doing a Search for Tomorrow. I needed some money, so I took this soap opera job, and I had a 6 a.m. call that morning and a 11:30 call that night at the opera. So I worked all day, and then I went to do the movie at the Met that night. But it was an incredible movie, and I think it helped me a lot to be in that movie. I don't know. I think that Harvey Weinstein wouldn't have hired me for Shall We Dance if I hadn't been in that movie.
Yeah. So you've already mentioned this as well, but you starred in Irving Berlin's musical Mr. President on Broadway. So,
Yes.
How was it, working with Irving Berlin himself and performing for Jackie Kennedy one night?
Oh, that was, and Jack came for the second act. They never say that. They say he never showed up. He was
came
watching
for the second act? Wow.
Yeah, came in for the second act. Came in late during the intermission, when everybody was seated, he slipped in to the seat next to her. Because there's a picture of them coming out of the theater together.
Wow.
That I prove it. But they always report that he was watching something on, a ball game or something. But, Mr. B, I called him Mr. B because we became friends. I mean, really, really friends. We used to make each other laugh. And he was doing, his offices were above the Winter Garden Theater. And I understand, I didn't know this at the time, but when they were looking for somebody to play the president's daughter, they wanted somebody feisty. And I was doing this, playing the Nymphomaniac in Mel Brooks's version of All American. You know, it was pure farce, of course. Um, uh, and uh, and he used to come down, Mr. B used to come down and stand in the back when it was my number, Nightlife. I had a number that I did. And it was and when they were casting the show, they sent out to all the agents that for the role of the president's daughter, they were asking for an Anita Gillette type. So my agent called and said, "What about Anita Gillette?" And they said, "Fine, when could she come and audition?" And I had to audition twice to get that job. But we became friends during rehearsal. Oh, he loved rehearsal. He loved being around everybody. He loved being there. He loved, and he would tell his silly little jokes, and I would tell my silly little jokes, jokes that my kids would tell me, you know. Like, why is the beach like a picnic? Because of all the sandwiches there. You know, stupid things like that. And but he had a secretary named Hilda Schneider, who was from Queens, and she was very, very, very protective of Mr. B. That's the way she talked all the time. And she would call me. She'd say, "Listen, Anita, this is Hilda here, Hilda Schneider," like I didn't know which Hilda it would be. And she would say, "Listen, do you think you could come over here? He's a little down today. Could you come over and cheer him up? You know, we'll have some lunch. You'll come." And I said, "Sure." And I would go over, and Hilda and Helmi Cressa, who was the guy that transposed all of Mr. B's stuff and wrote down the notes for him and everything. And we would have a lunch, and then we would just sit and talk and laugh. It was, you know, I called him every year on his birthday, May 11th. And he was just a great guy, but he had some issues with depression. He would get depressed, and because the show was not received well, except we ran for 9 months. But that was because we had that group of people, Josh Logan, you know, Lindsay and Krause, and Robert Ryan, Annette Fabre, and Irving Berlin. I mean, it was a big deal. And we sold a lot of theater parties. We sold a lot of tickets, but critically, it was not a success. And I think that depressed him. But we would just laugh it up all the time, which is the title of one of the songs he wrote. So we became very good friends.
Wow, that's amazing. What an incredible friendship that blossomed.
Yeah, I have to tell you one more story about Irving Berlin, you know, and Hilda. She called me once and she said the same thing. "Hello, it's Hilda Schneider." And I said, "Yes." She said, "Listen, we saw you last night. He saw you on the Carson show. He wants to talk to you, Anita. He wants to talk to you. And so when you're coming over here," and then you hear him screaming in the background, "I want to talk to," and so she said, "Oh, he wants to talk to you. He wants to talk." So he gets on the phone and he says, "Anita," because he had this raspy kind of voice. "Anita, this is Irving. I saw you last night on the Tonight Show. Anita, you sang Julie Stein." And he said, "Anita, I got a lot of songs."
Oh my gosh.
Yep.
Wow, incredible. So, you know, aside, we've mentioned Moonstruck, and you sort of touched on Shall We Dance, starring
Yeah.
Richard Gere and J-Lo and Susan Sarandon, who's actually a alum of our program at Catholic
Oh,
University.
really?
Yes, and you've also been in She's the One and Boys on the Side, another great cast. So, you know, can you expand on these experiences? I mean, have you enjoyed your time in these films and such?
how could you not enjoy yourself when you're surrounded by talent like that? And you know, I mean, it's where you don't really make a lot of money when you're doing Broadway unless you're in stay in something for years and years, which I usually try to do because I never wanted to be without a job. But I eventually had to, you know, raise my two kids on my own, basically. So I did need to keep working. But uh, they just were all great experiences. I mean, Mary Louise Wilson was, Mary Louise Parker, I mean, um, as she was, I played her mother in Boys on the Side. It was a rather unfortunate title, according to, I was on a cruise and this guy from Warner Brothers was, I think it was Warner Brothers, was on the ship, and we ended up having a discussion about it. And he said, we just couldn't think of the right title for that because it was, you know, what it was about, you know. Whoopi played a lesbian and then Mary Louise got involved, and Drew Barrymore was a doll. She was wonderful. And they were, it was their road trip like Thelma and Louise, only and there was some wonderful scenes in the movie, but it didn't do well at the box office because of, and this guy said it was because the title wasn't right. And I thought about it, but I wouldn't know what to have called it. I would be interested in a young person's opinion of what that movie title might be to draw in a crowd. But that's all the rest of them. I had small parts, but as Norman Jewison told me when I landed the Mona role, he said, Anita, it's not a big part, but it's very important. So there are no small parts, I guess, in movies. What's not to like?
Yeah. You know, you not only have had a great career in theater and movies, you've had an awesome career on TV. You know, you've had roles in Sex and the City, Law and Order SVU. You were Tina Fey's mom in 30 Rock and Modern Family. So how do you look back now on your time in TV, you know, playing these, like Norman Jewison said, these very small roles, but very important roles?
Well, I had big roles on TV too, you know.
Yeah.
I didn't have small roles on TV, just movies, featured films mainly. Mm-hmm. I've done some TV movies where I've had big roles, but But on the TV, I did a lot of. I mean, I did a lot of shows that never. I did pilots that sold for 13 episodes, but then you didn't see them anymore. I also, my first one was one that was voted one of the top 50 worst TV shows ever, called Me and the Chimp. Gary Marshall. Who would have thought Gary Marshall could write a flop? Laverne and Shirley, Odd Couple, and then Me and the Chimp. That was my luck. One of those times where you really need a rhinoceros hide.
Well, okay. In the same realm of TV, you were also a celebrity guest on game shows such as The Match Game and Pyramid Shows and What's My Line. Was that experience as fun as it looked?
It was the most wonderful experience. You know, my friend Penny Fuller says, I would never did those things. I didn't think it would, you know, I'm an actor. I'm not a, I said, well, I loved it. I had a great time. I enjoyed it and I got paid for the day and I loved it. And it got my name out there, you know, it really did. And I was good at it. So why not? I really loved Bob Stewart and Pyramid. That was my favorite one of all. It was just fantastic. Yeah. No, that was a godsend. Those game shows. I loved them. Especially the Pyramid, as I said. But early on, when I did What's My Line with Arlene Francis, who used to accessorize me, by the way, she didn't like what I wore in. She didn't say anything. She just, I brought you a little brooch. I brought you a little pair of earrings that I think you loved. She just it was like I was like some little doll that she would dress up. It's just funny. But I appealed to her. She only had sons, so I guess she thought of me like her daughter. It was nice. I had a lot of good experiences doing those game shows. Yeah. Soupy sales.
So we've basically gone through your like entire career at this point, and you were still working up until 2019 with the web series called After Forever. So
I'm still doing After Forever.
Still doing it?
Yeah, so we did another episode. It's one episode is on now. Our wonderful creator and writer Michael Slade died a couple of months ago. It was just a real blow to all of us. He was a wonderful man, human being, and beautiful writer. But we're going on with they've written, I guess he and Kevin Spiritus wrote the whole year, the next season, like 8 shows. So we have those scripts, and as soon as this pandemic allows us, we'll start shooting those. So we're going to do that. That's a digital series, you know, you don't make any money from it, but it's fun to do. And they did one where we all just got interviewed, you know, by the kid, little Finn Douglas, his name is. And that kid is talented, that child. Keep your eye on him, Finn Douglas. He wrote a song and played it in this episode we did. And just nobody would have had a dry eye that saw it. I sat there and wept the whole time listening to him. But it's a good episode. It's on now, I think.
Great. Where can we find it?
On Amazon Prime, After Forever, and it's Riley's assignment, class assignment, and he is asked by his teacher to name somebody who was a person who was the most influential in his life so far. And he's like a 11-year-old kid. And he names the guy that it's based on, this guy that dies. And I play his mother, only it's complicated. I don't want to go into it, but anyway, what they did was interview people. So all the cast members were asked what they thought was the biggest, what they remember most about Jason. And so everybody was able to do it from their home. We didn't get together. That was just an interview, supposedly from Riley, asking the questions. So.
Excellent. Excellent. That's really awesome.
Yeah, it's good. It's a really good episode too. You'll like it, I think.
Great. So, we heard about a little bit of that, what you've been doing that, and that just came out amidst this whole COVID crisis. So, coupled with sort of what's going on in the world with, the COVID shutdown, but, really putting a damper on the entertainment industry, especially live theater, combining that, what advice do you have for young students and artists and up and coming folks that want to enter this business during this time to kind of keep on going?
Well, it's something that I'm trying to teach myself, like learn technical stuff, which I just have an aversion to. But that's because I didn't grow up in this age. I'm lucky that I can help my, some of my friends who are in my age group. I can tell them a few things here and there. But I think that to me, if I don't have an audience, when you do comedy, there's no substitute for audience. Even if there's somebody making a laugh track, it's not the same. And I don't know what to say because, you know, then I got into cabaret. I've done a bunch of cabaret. I've played Birdland a lot. I'm now Birdland. I just sent them some money to help keep them open. And it's just so overwhelming. I don't know. I mean, I think young people already know what to do as far as keeping themselves alive on, you know, on the screen. It takes devices and you have to know how to work them. And I'm too old to learn this because it's not going to give me a live audience. And I like to do comedy. I do the other stuff too. You know, I'm all over the map with acting, and acting is acting, but I just I don't know, because what I consider acting is making truth of a lie, making the audience believe that my name is Jenny Malone, like in chapter 2, which is my Tony nom play that I did, the Neil Simon play. That was one of the big moments in my career, doing that. And I had to stop singing before I would be considered for any straight plays. And Joe Papp helped me do that. But for these kids now, I guess they can create their own stuff like you're doing. You know, how do you do it? You have better advice than I do, don't you? I mean,
It's keeping the brain going. Definitely is keeping the brain and creativity flowing, because we are creative beings. Like you've been saying this entire episode about, you know, creating your roles and creating your career and kind of shifting. You know, you said you love comedy and you love a live audience, but you were creative in shifting yourself to, you know, film, and look at where it has gotten you.
yeah, yeah. Well, when you know, when you're doing film, I haven't done a lot of funny stuff, you know. I've done mostly people that weep, you know, and Boys on the Side, and well, Mitzi was funny, but she was a little, they didn't keep in all the drunk stuff, you know. It didn't pay off because they cut some of the, when the real kicker was when she taught the mambo class, and she almost damn well fell over, you know, but that would have supported the little, you know, drinking and out of the cupboard, but they didn't keep it in. So it was weak, that, you know, they didn't. So movies are all different, you know, and I wasn't, you know, they had to make room for Jennifer's Dance, which they didn't have, and they needed that. And but I do, I still, if it's theater or cabaret, which is where I am now, that's where I would live, is in cabaret right now. I don't know that, and I have the age thing problem, the IMDb, Anita Gillette, you know, born, and then they give you your date of birth, and there's no way you can get them to stop that. Because if I go in for people like 80 years old, they say you don't look 80. And if I go in, I can't, and they don't ask me for people in their 70s or, you know, late 60s. They don't ask for that.
Right.
So they just put you in a box, and I don't know how to break out of that. I really don't, unless somebody knows me well and knows what I'm good for, and knows that I, you know, really wants me and offers me the job.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Welcome.
We had such a blast with you today. This was we laughed for what, an hour straight, and that is just what we needed. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
We are excited to share this episode with our audiences, and you know, we're just wishing you all the best. Stay well and safe until we can all be together at one of your cabaret shows or whatever.
Oh yes, I'm going to do Birdland again. That's what I'm hoping.
And we will be there, will we not, Sophie?
Okay, I'm going to count on it.
And stay in touch. We are always sending you our best. And if there's anything we can do for you in the future, please.
Thank you, Brandon. Thank you, Sophie. Thank you both very much.